This is the equipment I'm going to use today. I have two little rubbers, electric rubbers, really rather cool, lovely. And each time you use them, make sure that you cut the tops off the rubber because they do go hard, and the very first time you use them, they leave a horrible black dark mark on your work. So just cut the ends off to make sure that it's going to be nice, fresh, new rubber. They're so cheap. Just use another one if that's what you want to do. I've got a 0.5 propelling pencil. Now these are really rather fabulous. I like them because it's always got a sharp point. And this particular one, the Kuru Toga, is very clever because every time you work with it, when you press down and you lift off, there's a spring inside which turns the lead a quarter turn. And that means that you always have a sharp point. And that's quite important when you're wanting to get in there and get detail. What I would say is they come usually with an HB lead, and that's no good for me for drawing. So when I replace my leads, I buy a little, they come in lovely little kind of plastic sachets, and I buy myself a 2B box full of these because that's the best for drawing. Now, having said that, pencil, I'm using a Derwent graphite pencil, that's 2B. And a note here to manufacturers, to people who sell them actually, please don't put these sticky labels with your barcodes down the end of the pencil like this. It's a nightmare. If you take it off, you land up with all this sticky mank all around the pencil where you're writing. And if you leave them on, it does this and it becomes scruffy. But this in a pencil sharpener is awful because it thickens the pencil, the width of it. And then when you try to get it in here, 9 times out of 10, it won't go. So please don't do it. But that, my darlings, is a 2B pencil. What are these? These are cardboard and they are really rather good. You call them torchons or they're blend sticks. And you can use these to blend your pencil. I'll show you later on. But they do get dirty, and rather than sharpening them, all you need to do is have one of these clever little tools, and this has got layers and layers of sandpaper on it. You could make one if you wanted to, and all you've got to do is just rub it against it like this, and then that cleans this for you and keeps it sharp. And all I do with that is just bang it on the inside of my bin in the studio to keep it dust free. We're ready to go. Here's my drawing. There's the picture I took when we were at Newark, and I'm going to start now by putting all the darks in wherever I can see them. I'm going to shade my drawing. Well, we've reached the stage now where I've drawn it, I've shaded it, and realistically that is the underpainting now. So anything that I lay on top is going to be a wash. Having said that, I need to paint the sky. I haven't gone into the sky and shaded it. I could have done, but I haven't, because I just want to paint it as I can right now and here and now. I could have shaded the sky, but I haven't, because I just want to go in now and I want to paint it now and use the colour to say everything I've got to say about it. I want to use cobalt blue. I like that very much for this kind of bright summer's day. You know, it lends itself very well to, it's very close, isn't it? More so than French ultramarine, which is much darker. And here we go, look. So I have the paint in the palette. I'm going to use up some of the old paints that I've got. I've got this palette here, really looks disgusting, but I want to use up some of the paints. And the first thing I want to do with this is go into this and just wet it. I'm intending to drop in a little bit of grey for the clouds, and to do that I'm literally going to use just muck off the palette. So nothing exotic there, nothing special. If you've got grunge around the edge of your palette, this is the time to be thinking about maybe dropping it into the clouds. And my first port of call is to come in and just dampen some of my sky. I'm not going to wet all of it, because I'd like to leave some areas for bits and pieces of cloud. And to keep those nice clean edges, we do that just by leaving dry here. So let's just do this and let's just see how we go. We're going to make it up as we go along, so let's just see what happens. I'm going to come in there and drop this beautiful blue in. I want to keep it soft, and I'd like to keep the edges quite soft as well. I don't want to be too excitable around the edges of the painting, because then that will turn it into a vignette rather than a solid picture. So come in here, down here with some of this blue and pull that through here like this. I want the cloud to sit around the castle, but we can't have it solely behind the castle. So I've got to introduce a few little bits and pieces of colour here and there. I'm just going to come in like that. Bring it down behind these trees. The edges, rinse my brush, tap the wet off. Then I'm going to come around the edges, rinse the brush again. Come in from the outside so that you're just being polite. Polite to the paint. Don't go in and barge around in it. I see my paint's granulating. Do I like that? Yes, that's okay. I'll put up with that. I'm going to, whilst it's all still wet and mobile, I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to dampen down some of those edges so that they're not too hard. Just soften, soften, soften. And then what do we do about this gunge off the palette? So I'm going to dampen some of these areas here and then just come into this sort of scuzzy muck around the edges. And if I just drop that in to some places. So again, just dab and daub and a bit of this and a bit of that. Put it in. And then I'm going to rinse and dab, and I want to come in again and just soften those like this. It's a little bit hard there. I'm just going to gentle that up a bit. And then if I clean my brush, I'm going to come into the bits of the cloud here, clean it, dab it, clean it, dab it, twist as you come away, clean it, dab it. Just softening up some of these edges. Pulling it out into the sky, if you like. There we go, that'll do. That'll get there. Oh, let's just soften that quickly. Don't want hard edges behind the tree. So now we're just going to sit down and wait until that dries a little bit. I've put a clip on the paper just to hold my book down because I don't want it to move about as I'm working. That's annoying. And until I manage to fold the book up and close it and press it, the paper will warp to a certain degree. So that will stop it from being annoying. The next thing we're going to do is paint our castle, and we have to remember here that we are literally putting a wash on this. I am not painting it. And as I see, I've got two colours. The towers are this beautiful kind of golden yellow, and the colour I'm going to use for that, the base, is this raw sienna. I like it very much. It's a nice colour. It's warm and it's soft. It's not opaque like yellow ochre, so it's much more fluid and it's transparent. This is what we're looking for. And I want to maybe just tone it down a little bit. And to do that, I'm going to go in with a tiny brush full of burnt umber, just to take it down a tiny bit, because as it is, it was a little bit too bright yellow. And we need our paint to be thin, thin, thin now. And I'm talking about probably skimmed milk. I want thin colour because I just want to run it over the bits and pieces. So here we go. I'm going to start over here with this tower. Don't be too excitable with your paint, because you don't keep brushing it, because if you do, you're going to land up moving the pencil underneath. Having said that, what we're doing now is going to set the pencil. So it should mean that afterwards we won't be able to rub it out and it shouldn't smudge. I'm coming down here, down this tower, through here. So just a gentle wash. Pull all the paint down to one corner so that you've got that blob. And then all you need to do is wick the dirty brush out on a cloth or a tissue, and then come in and lift out the blob. If you go in there with a clean brush, it will take too much colour out, and we don't want that. And then I'm going to just drop a little bit of that paler yellow in there, pull that down, do exactly the same. Wick it, come back and lift. And then I want this tower up here to be painted the same glorious colour. So I'm going to come down here, down this face of the tower first, all of it, just pull it down. And bring it down to here. Ignore all that for a minute because that's going to have greenery on it, this bottom piece. Wicking that out now. And this side and this up here has to be a little bit lighter. So I am going to come in with just neat raw sienna for that. So I clean my brush and pick up neat golden raw sienna. I'm going to put that through there. So that's really more water. To it to be really pale, because this is the side that the sun is on. There we are. So that gives us our initial towers. Now the other part of this castle, because the sun's shining on it, that is really pale, is this here and just inside these windows. So again, just the neat raw sienna, very thinly, and we're going to come in here and we're going to paint down the Juliet balcony like that. And then we're going to come down the side of these windows. Paint's barely there, isn't it? You can hardly see it. But when we get the darker colour on, it will show up round the doorway. And then this is quite pale in here as well. In there. All right. Happy with that? Yes, indeed. Now we have the colour that we've painted here. Here it is. And when I'm looking at the rest of the castle, there's brick here. instead of stone. And this is quite red, isn't it? We can see that red colour in there. I'm going to come through there and I'm going to introduce a little bit of alizarin crimson to my mix. I want it to be this pinker colour. Looking for that kind of colour. And again, plenty of water. And now I'm going to run that through here. I'm going to bring it down this area here. Too thin, too much water this time. So I'm just going to have to add a little bit more pigment. Let's try that. It's better. And I still don't think that's dark enough, so let's add even more pigment. So I'm not making the colour darker really, I'm just making the pigment, the mix thicker, so that I get a more hefty look when I offer it up to the paper. And you'll find that your pencil will resist the paint to some degree. I've gone over the tower, so I'm just going to take a nice clean brush and run it down there. I can do that because the tower's dry. And then I'm going to come through here. Do this in segments. Now I know what I've done there too. I've gone over a window. This is one of the reasons for doing it in a segment. So come back, nice thirsty brush. Let's just lift out that window like that. I'll put a little bit of blue in there in a minute. Down, next segment through here. That roof is green there, so I'm going to come back to that in a minute. Down and through, like that. This is all brickwork as well, so we can do that in this lovely colour. And then I'm going to run this down through here. Like that. Now I'm not sure what's happening down here because you can't really see through the foliage. So what I'm going to do is rinse my brush, and all along that bottom edge, I'm just going to interfere with it like that. Just going to soften the whole thing. And whilst it's all still wet, I'm coming into my, this is sap green, and I'm going to just drop some sap green into there. Put the colour in, nudge it around like that. And then the same applies. We've got some sap green over here, and I've got some along that wall. So it's obviously moss and lichens that have settled on that wall. There's a little bit up here. So it's just a very thin mix of colour. Just dropping it in. We've got a tree here. I'm going to deal with that later. I'm not doing that now. And then this roof is also green, so I'm going to come in there and pop the green on there. And I don't think that's dark enough, that little bit there, so I'm just going to drop a bit more on. You see it's bleeding out into the back. I'm quite happy for it to do that. It's quite nice to have that muzzy effect there, so that's fine. A little bit darker in places. Right, whilst I think of it, I'm just going to go in with my cobalt, and I just want to put in that window like that. And there's also blue that we can see through here, so let's do that while we're at it. So I'm going to have another little bit of cobalt that's going to go in there. That gives you the impression that you can actually see through parts of the castle, which is really cool. That's good. That's what we want. Okay, we're ready for the next bit. I want to look at this now and see if I need to just touch up and titivate anything colour-wise. I'm quite happy with it. I think I'd like that a little bit redder, so I'm going to come back to my alizarin crimson, and I'm just going to run that through there. A little bit through there. And I'm just wiping it. You see, I'm not being too clever and painting it. I'm just wiping it across. A little bit in there. Okay, that's better. There's also sort of colour along here, isn't there? So I'm going back to this. Just want to add a little bit down that tower, down here, because the rendering's obviously come off. This is what remains of it, and we're seeing the brick underneath. Okay, there are going to be trees over here, and we're going to be dealing with those in a second. Let's go down first of all and look at the water and see what we can do with some of the water and this green sward of grass here and this. This is a mixture of brickwork and grass, and I think where I'm going with this, I'm going to use my brickwork colour. So let's just put the initial wash in with that, like this. Let's get rid of the drip. And then I want to come into that and just add, I'm going to take a little bit of Payne's Grey, because I would like to make it look a bit grubby, like this. And then I'm going to just come back with a touch of green, because there's moss all over it. So I want to just drop in, pick that up and move it around like that. It's quite dark down here, so again I think I need to get hold of a teeny bit of Payne's Grey on the brush and just deaden that a little bit. I like that bright green. I'd like a bit more of that, I think. I'm just going back to pick up the tip, just the tip of the brush. That'll do. There's a bit of green in there as well. Okay, so we've got green grass here. Let's deal with that next. So my intention is to start quite pale. So let's put it in thinly to start with, like that. Not too much water. And then I'm going to pick up a bit more green on the brush, and I'm going to pull through. Like that. I'm going to come into that edge and just move that so that I don't have a hard colour there. And again, this is a bit sort of bright, so with a bit of burnt umber, if we come in and we just drop a little bit of burnt umber in it, just to make it look like there's soil there underneath the grass. That'll do. Let's get rid of those blooms there. That's good. Right, that's the wall. We'll come back to that. I can't do that now because this is wet. But what we can do is we can come along here and do something with some of this. And to do that, all I'm going to do is just pop some water through there so that it all just bleeds and mixes. I'm going to start with a little bit of green. The green against the castle will give you the contrast. It's not there in the picture, not really, it's not. But I'm going to do that because it will just give you that lovely green against red. Complementary colours works very well. I'm moving into a little bit now of my raw sienna. This is that sort of dead straw look that we get from plants that have died down during the summer and just left a strawy remains of dried up stalks. And the other colour that's in here, which I really love, it's another red, a reddy brown, is burnt sienna. And if we drop some of that in hither and yon, again, that will look like tired bracken, emotional bracken. I just want to suggest what's there. I don't want to create this conglomerate of colours and brightness. I don't want that. It's not what I'm looking for. And I'm just going to use this colour here to put that brick in through there. It fades away because this becomes a tree. There's something along here which is quite red, and I can't work out from my picture, and I can't remember what I was seeing there. So I'm just going to drop that in like that. And then we have the bridge. This is a bridge over the river. I'm just going to drop that in. We don't need definition, it's not important. Don't worry about it. But the water is going to be quite important now. I need the blue. Looking at it, I need the blue to reflect the sky. And in through here, we've got all sorts of colours. This is just the gold of the buildings. And it's quite interesting that very often in water, light things will reflect darker and dark things reflect lighter. We just need to have a little think about that when we're trying to paint. Refraction. I need a greeny, sludgy colour through here, don't I? So we need to see if we can make it up somehow. Let's have a bit of a play. Basically it starts with green. And then I see some brown in that. To make that a sludgy green. But does it have some Payne's grey in it? Yes, probably. And it's quite dark. You know, I've got to bear in mind that that colour in there is that's that, isn't it? But this is much darker. So I'll need to be adding a bit more Payne's grey or a neutral tint, something to really tone it down and take it down. But I don't want the water to be overwhelming on the picture. So let's try and think about that colour. I started, didn't I, with that's my sap green. And then I added burnt umber. And then we went into some Payne's grey. We've got that dark. Now that looks very dark, but I'm going to put water down first. So therefore I'm going to need to have quite a hefty colour. And as for the yellow, I'm going to just use neat raw sienna because I want it to be golden in the water. Want it to show up. Okay. Right. Remember, the shadows that are in there, hopefully, are these shadows that we already have in the water. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed for that. And the first thing I need to do with all of it, I think, is wet it. I'm going to come through. Remembering that I want to keep the edges and the bottom quite loose so that we keep this vignette idea. And my first port of call is going to be the easy bit, which is putting the blue in. So I'm just coming through there, putting the blue in till it reaches that shadow there. Oh, I've gone over the tower shadow. There. Let's soften all of that edge just with a damp brush like that. And then I think my next thing to do is to come through and let's add the gold for the tower. There's one there. We've got gold in there. And we've got just a frisson of it there. Make sure everything's soft. Just a damp brush coming through again. And now I'm going to go into my dark sludge. And we've got real dark in there between the two towers. It's very dark through here, but there's quite a bit of gold in that bit. So I'm going to just soften, add a bit more gold, a little bit, look. Shatter it so that it's not, that's it. Wipe it like that. And then I'm going to this next area here, make sure it's still wet. And then now we're going to go in here and we're going to add our green into this. And I've tried to leave a few little gaps so that I can come back to the golden colour and I can just drop some of that in. And I'm also going to drop a little bit of the raw sienna in so that I have a bit, that's not raw sienna, a twerp. I'm also going to drop a little bit of burnt sienna in so that I get an echo of that in the water. And then through here we get even darker. So now I'm going to have to thicken my colour. So a bit more burnt umber, a bit more sap green, because I'm going to come through here and I want to make that quite a dark area. It's drying, so just a bit more water. Keep all that soft. Like that. And then we need that to dry. Our next port of call, I think, is going to be this wall. And this is a modern day brick wall. So again, I'm going into the red and I'm adding more red to my castle mix. It's a red brick wall. So come along here and just pop that in like that. So that stands out. That picks up the red that's on the other side here of the picture. So that's a good ploy again to balance that idea as well. This down here is a wall and it's a really dark, murky wall. Now, I know some of you don't like Payne's Grey. All right, so if that's the case, let me introduce you to another colour. This is Daniel Smith's Moonglow, and you might have come across it before. So that's it in a watery, wishy-washy way, and that's it. Beautiful, beautiful colour, bluey sort of mauve. And it's very good for mixing in with colours like this to give you a bit of depth and shadow. How about we take some Moonglow and we put it into our dark water. I want a bit more, like that. And then I'm going to use that colour for this really dark wall under here. So we soften that, come in this side, so that we keep these frayed soft edges. And then I'm going to just gently wipe it along there like that. And then I'm going to pull that and just blend it through there. And that gives us this darkly shaded area through here. The key point at this stage in the picture is to remember that you are painting over a sketch. We're just laying a wash. The main issue with this picture, it is a pencil sketch with a wash on top. I don't want to kill it by over painting it and putting too much colour on. That's not the point of this particular exercise. I really need to rein it back, and I'm one of the world's worst for that. I want to keep painting and painting and painting. We have trees here. There's some nice, easy little ideas that you can use for trees. We can go in with the edge of our brush and we can drop in all the teeny tiny branches. But this was autumn. No leaves on the trees, not really. What was there was just fading away and dying. So I need to be a little bit circumspect and careful about that. And there's a good way to do that. If we load our brush, and we can load it with several different colours, I'm going to use a little bit of sap green, and I'm going to use some burnt umber. And that gives me those two colours together on the brush. I don't want it too wet. That's too wet. What I'm going to do is take my cloth, and I'm looking for a thirsty brush, and I'm looking to use the side of the brush. Too wet. I need a bit more brown, don't I? So I'm going back into, this is burnt sienna this time. And we can create trees just by using the side of a thirsty, damp, dry brush. So I have another tree here in the front. I need to differentiate it a little bit, don't I? Because I don't want it to be all sort of browns like one behind. Therefore, I'm going to rinse my brush. And this time I'm coming into the raw sienna. So pop some paint on there. And then I'm going to pick up some of the, what shall I do? I'm going to do burnt umber, I think. And then we make sure that we have it at the right level of squidge. Let's try that. I'm going to come in there. Just using the side of our brush. And you're going up into the canopy of the tree, not necessarily coming down into the whole tree. So we see the branches. I've missed a bit of wall. All right, so that gives us 2 trees there. See, it's such an easy way to paint a tree. Such an easy way to do it. We'll use it along here with these bits of shrubbery too. These trees are casting shadow on the castle wall. And honestly, I think this moon glow is a fabulous colour for this. So using it very thinly, I want to come in here and just introduce the idea. It's too wet. Of some of the shadows from the trees. That'll do. And then we have to think over here about, we've got a green evergreen here and this tree in the foreground, this lighter colour. Tricky, what do you do first, the evergreen or the lighter tree? I'm going to do the lighter tree. I want to use the same sort of colours that I've used here. So this lovely raw sienna. Too wet, Sharon, too wet. Raw sienna and some of the sap green. Let's get rid of the excess. So again, I'm going to, I use an old towel for this, everybody, and it's, after this, it's really quite wet, it's soaking. So I would say to you, much better than tissues. You need something to really mop up after yourself. Now that's quite nice, but there's not enough definition there. I want a little bit more of something, so I'm going to go back to the green. I don't seem to have enough green in there. Nope, it's too much. You'll get a feel for this technique if you have a little play with it. It's fab. So I'm going to come through here because these are the branches. I'm going to put some over the wall, why not? These are the branches that are going to go in here. And I've now got to try and paint around some of it with the dark green. So let's see what we can do with that. Patience and time and just quietly working away at it. Small brush. I think I'm going to go into something like a number 4, like this. And I need to make up a nice dark green. We've used sap green, so let's bring that through across here. And we need to make that darker. The colour we've used in the sky is cobalt, and cobalt's not really enough of a punch to make that dark. So chances are we could either use, oh, I'll tell you what, we could use the moon glow, couldn't we? Let's scoop that through. Not quite enough, you see, it hasn't got enough kick. So we need something darker. I don't want to make it brown by using something like burnt umber, but I do have, this is Prussian blue, and Prussian blue is blooming wonderful when you bring it. Oh, look at that. Yum, yum, yum. I'm going to use up the last of that Prussian blue and put that in there. If you want to darken a green, you can't beat Prussian blue. I want to use the point of the brush to start with to get these spiky bits up into the sky. And I've got a really sharp edge against that castle there. So I've got to get that in there, like that. And then I fill in the gaps. Finally, looking back over here, I just need to do something with my bridge and the work through here. It's grey, so leaving it stark white like that, it's not painted white. I'm just going to use up the remnants of my, this is the moon glow. So I just want to bring some of that through there. That will dry up lighter. And then I notice that some of these struts underneath have got a red cast to them. So whether that's reflection or maybe that could be something to do with paint on them to preserve them, to stop them from suffering rot from the water. I just want to add a little hint to some of those supports underneath, like that. So I'm now going to stand away from the painting and declare that done, and I'm happy, and I'm not going to carry on because I know that I would spoil it. I know me.